Now, the rest of the story.
I'm going to start this video off by saying I'm going to cut out all the negative and foul language. So thanks for watching. Thanks for tuning in. Take care. Take it easy. Keep in touch. I'll talk to you guys later. Okay, on a more serious note, no, we really weren't cussing and swearing and screaming nearly as much as I like to joke we did. This was a little bit of a challenge. It was more of a fight more than anything. Let's start off right off the bat as to what we're doing. One of the lift cylinders on the 773 Bobcat has been leaking all fall actually, and it's gotten to a point where, not that it's forcing us to have to change it. I mean, it does need to be done, but it's gotten to the point where we don't need the skid steer for a while. I mean, a couple weeks. I mean, the big thing we need it for is really for feeding cattle, but we got the JCB of Ryan's for out at his place, and I've been using the 7600 down at mine. So the only real thing that was a concern, if this would have taken a while to do, was for actually hauling hay out for myself. But seems how I really don't plan on selling any hay for 2 weeks. It just made sense that we actually got done hauling hay the day before. We went and brought the skid steer home, and Dad and I started working on this. Now here's the problem. Every once in a while when you're doing shed projects, shop projects, I mean, this is a combination of both, a simple task that really should have been done in the half hour, 45 minutes that we intended on this taking, turns into a day-long project. So what the problem was is that the top of the cylinder, the pin came out as it was supposed to. I mean, Dad and I started this project, and I took off the hoses off the cylinder. I mean, everything is locked up, as you can see on the far side, that orange bar about the back of my head. So we're in no immediate danger there of the booms falling down on us. But the problem is we went to go take out this lower pin. The lower pin has decided that it is not going to move. We were able to get it to, we didn't even get it a quarter of an inch, actually moved out. But we went on the inside, and we have a smaller impact than the one I currently am using. And we were able to just hardly get the hammer punch of it to move the pin out. I mean, just ever so much, to the point where we couldn't get a pipe wrench on it because we were going to try to turn it to try to at least spin it in there. We couldn't do anything with it. So the next day, which is what we're looking at, Ryan and I started working on it and kind of approached it from a different angle. The problem is everything that I wanted to do involved heat and fire. Well, what happens when a hydraulic cylinder leaks? You get oil everywhere. What is one of the last things that you want to do when you're, working on something? Getting rid of all of your, well, the first thing you want to do is get rid of all your flammable materials that you're working around. So we did. We actually pressure washed this off before we started working on this, yesterday. But the problem is, it's oil. The lines were still dripping casually, here and there, and it's just one of those things where oil just it's everywhere. We did our best to clean it up, and as you can see, as the project got going on, the don't give us whats were starting to increase, and the amount of violence being administered to this pin was starting to increase by I guess say exponentially, because we went from just trying to use the punch or the air hammer, albeit the smaller one, on the inside by the motor pushing it out. We ended up resorting to getting the welder out, welding a couple burrs on it, or nuts, and I actually had this loop sitting around where it was just conveniently enough worked great for putting the come along on. Now, the part of the video you guys aren't seeing is when we were using the come along, we used the 7600 and it had the bail tines on the back. What we were doing is hooking the come along to the 7600 to try to wedge this out, pull it out. Problem is we pulled the skid steer sideways. So Kister Engineering at its best, we went ahead and raised the tines up, and as you can see, just underneath me, the tine is up against the back of the skid steer, and that is, and there went the weld the second time. That is what's actually keeping the skid steer from sliding over, so we were able to actually get the full pressure, the full amount of pressure that we needed onto it, and then we really started to do some damage. Just hitting it with the come along, it didn't work to the point where it was wedged in there hard enough that Ryan and I mean namely Ryan was doing the come along for me, to where we couldn't move it. So in a fit of frustration, there was enough of the pin. You can see that the pin is coming out at this point, but there was enough of the pin hanging out that I was able to get out the bigger impact, like you're seeing us use now, and administer a pretty healthy dose of some pretty serious pain onto this pin. You can see the loop that I'm using, or the eyelet that I'm using. Just two burrs. I actually had to downsize them because I used a bigger one initially that was just under the size of the pin, so it was giving me the most surface area I could really get. And then I used the welder and I just kind of tack welded all around it the best I could, because I didn't want to run the risk of welding the pin fast to the frame. I mean, that would open up a whole different can of worms. Avoided that. And once we were able to get it out, which you saw me just welding, there was enough of the pin out at that point that I was able to really burn the weld in, and we really started to do some damage. And you can see the camera just shook. You're sitting on top of the 3-point, and that was the come along pulling the skid steer back tight against the bail mover. So once we realized it was starting to move, like really move, is when we really started to ramp up how aggressive we were being to this. So just hitting it with the air hammer wasn't enough. Basically all I was doing, I was sending a vibration down the length of that pin, because on the far side of the hydraulic cylinder is where the problem was. This one right up front, that wasn't so much the problem as the far side, because this side was loose. I mean, Ryan was actually, I didn't include that in the video. I had a clip where Ryan was actually using a bar, and he was actually pushing the pin, or the frame that the pin is bolted to and all that stuff. He was actually able to move that, but the pin was solid. So what we're doing is, as I'm hitting it with the impact, and voila, we just got it out, Ryan was actually constantly applying pressure, keeping steady pressure on the pin, and that's ultimately what broke it out. Didn't take super long. I mean, it was 24 hours from when we started to when we got it out. It was just one of those hassles that is awfully aggravating. I mean, it should have been super simple and required a little bit more determination on our part. So the cylinder this thing's got 5,400 hours on it, I do believe. It just turned 5,400 hours, and the cylinders have had no work done to them. And the O-ring on the end, which I don't believe I even kept around for you guys to see, the O-ring was cut in half. So it's amazing that it was leaking to the point where we could even use it. I mean, there's the pin. Really isn't as grooved as bad as we thought it would be, because for how much it was fighting us, we figured that it was grooved bad, and this combination of the cylinder and the pin sitting in there goofy was wedging it in, and ultimately I do believe it was rusted on the far side of the cylinder. So we're gonna get this replaced, which there won't be a video on it. That's just how it's gonna be. It's gonna go back together just fine, so that doesn't really justify a video. But we'll get the Bobcat up and running again. We haven't had enough snow to worry about moving too much snow. Feeding cows, moving cows, I mean, everything right now this time of year is working on random projects and making sure the cows are fed. So the bottle calves, not bottle calves, but the newborn calves you guys have heard me talk about, they are actually loving the cold weather. They were doing some dancing around their moms the other day when we were feeding them, so definitely not taking any hurt. But for real, take care, take it easy, keep in touch. I'll talk to you later.